So for years, I followed the advice of famous writers and thinkers because they all said the same thing. Hey, the way I think is that I write. So I think when I write. And yeah, I assumed that that's just how it works. So you sit down, you write, and that's how you think, and that's how you develop ideas. But that's just not what happened to me. It just didn't work for me. So I would usually, stare at a blank page, type a sentence, delete it, try again. And I realized that this is because just that's not the way my brain works. And I realized that actually I think by talking out loud. And once I have figured this out, my whole creative process changed for me. So I think I've been more creative in the last 3 months than I have been in the last 3 years combined. And in this video, I'm going to show you my actual creative process, how I go from an idea to a finished piece of content in this case. But you can also apply this to anything else. So it doesn't have to be a piece of content. It can also be a software idea. It could be a brand idea, anything like that. And I also want to show you why your creative block might be just a process mismatch, so that maybe you are starting your process in the wrong way. So I have prepared, as always in this series, which is kind of my behind the scenes of how I work and how I'm building my venture, I have prepared a mirror board and I'm going to walk you through everything you see here. So let's hop into the framework that I want to kick this video with, which is basically a framework I have developed for myself just to try and understand what is actually happening. Why isn't this process working for me, the process that is working for others? And so it's basically a framework that kind of explains how we can, or how people develop ideas. And there is 2 axes, as you can see. And it basically asks you, so this framework asks you 2 questions. The first one is, how do you better think? Do you think alone, like internal dialogue, or do you better think when you're actually speaking out loud? Or do you need to move or be still? So you can see here, we have the internal processing or external processing of ideas, and then movement versus stationary. So an example is like if you're internal thinker but need movement, that would be, you could be the solo walker, going to walk alone and just thinking. Then if you need movement but you're an external processor, then I named this voice processor. So this would be you going for a walk and talking, which is actually what I am. And I'll show you how I actually am using this process these days. Then we have a deep thinker, a person who is internally processing ideas and can be stationary. And then again, stationary, but external would be somebody who is like a collaborator type of person who is sitting in a room, maybe next to a whiteboard, maybe also with a mirror board, and just talking through ideas with someone. So you might already have a hunch for where you are, but if the process that you're currently using isn't working for you, maybe try some of the other things. So the one that is actually working for me is the voice processor, and I'll show you how this works. So the last thing I want to mention here is that this framework is not about how you actually do the work, but it's more about how you develop ideas. So you might develop an idea by being a voice processor like me, but then you need to sit down and go into a Figma to design the idea, or you might need to write code to be able to finish your idea. So I will now focus on the voice processor track. I haven't heard a lot of people talking about this, so I want to share how I do it and maybe inspire you to try it as well and see if it's the right thing for you. Okay, so everything changed for me when I actually started, going out. So this is the vineyard that's very close to my house, and I just go regularly here on walks. And so what I do is I bring my phone with me, and I have my favorite LLM, which is Claude, and I just basically talk to it. So one thing that all of these LLMs have, obviously, is the voice input. You can recognize this icon here. And I have used this heavily. However, the trouble is that with ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini, what happens a lot of the times, especially if you have like long rants or long thoughts, it's just too much for their processor. So you then get this message back. Sorry, I couldn't quite catch that. And me having just spent 10 minutes speaking out loud about my idea and not being able to capture it was very, very frustrating. That's why I'm not using the built-in voice processing anymore, but I actually have downloaded and I'm using a tool called Super Whisper. And you have others, Whisperflow and other tools do the same. The cool idea here is that it records you and stores locally. So it actually creates an MP3 file. I believe it's MP3, but if not, it's just another version of an audio file. So it then locally or through cloud processes your track, your MP3 track of your recording of your speech, and then it just transcribes it. So it's basically voice to text software. And then you can just take this and plug it into your LLM, whichever one you're using. So this way I get to move and I get to talk and I get to consistently and reliably capture my thoughts. Okay, so then I put it into AI and I start working with it. And that's what I want to show you now. So what you see here is my initial brain dump, for one of the latest YouTube videos. I believe the title is Business Wants Boring, but You Crave Novelty. So that's a video that I'm going to show you how I basically developed the idea and the script for. And the very first thing I want to show you here and point your attention to is the length. So this is basically me talking out loud for 10 to 15 minutes about a certain idea. And I think a lot of people get this very first step wrong, where are trying to ask LLM to come up with an idea. I use it completely differently. For me, as I said, I think by talking out loud. So I go on a walk and I just press record and I start thinking about a certain topic. And I develop it by talking, not by talking with AI, but just by having a brain dump. My first brain dump is the basis of everything for that particular idea. So yeah, this is a lot of text. I would never have written this myself without starting to edit. It's just my brain is wired to edit things if I'm typing or writing, but if I'm talking, I can just keep going. So that's me speaking for probably 15 minutes in this case. And I just want to show you how it basically then got translated into the whole agenda or the breakdown of the video and the main framework. So you can see here that basically I started by telling it that, hey, I want to record a video. And I had a core idea, which is the idea is what to do if you need novelty, but your business wants boring. And you can also recognize this in the title of the video, which is your business wants boring, you crave novelty. Right? So I had this core idea and that's all I had. And then everything else that you will see from here on basically was developed by me just thinking out loud. So I'm here basically just explaining the core problem that I feel myself as that kind of person. Basically saying that a lot of people who start businesses are makers, creative people who like novelty, but then at a certain point you realize that business actually wants stability. That's the core problem that kind of got translated into the very first part of the video, which is called the maker's dilemma. Then I go into the two traps. And this is something I didn't know prior to me starting to speaking out loud. It just came out. As you can see, I use the word maybe here. Hey, maybe this section can be called the problem with the maker variety. Bad title, obviously, but just I'm thinking out loud here. So I come up with stuff while talking. And I say here, hey, so we have two problems as makers. One is that we just do too many things and we never basically never really allow it to develop, to gain momentum. That's the first problem. So you are just craving novelty a lot of the time and you don't give your ideas time to develop. Or second idea is that a lot of makers are disciplined enough to build something for long enough, but then they stop making it because they start following the usual business advice, which is to become managers. Okay, so this basically became then this 2 traps part of the video. And I heard myself talking and I realized, okay, I'm only talking about the problem so far, so I need to go into the solution. So then start brainstorming out loud the solutions. And I basically shared 3. Okay, so how do we find solutions? Here is 1, here is 2nd, here is 3rd. I won't read them to you because that's not the point. You can also watch the video. But the point here is I have, by speaking out loud, identified 3 different options. But at the same time, I felt like maybe there isn't just like options, because when I just enumerate or list out the options, I usually have the feeling of this is not comprehensive enough. Like for me, it's better to think in frameworks because they feel more aligned with the world, because it feels like you're not missing any options. Whereas if you just list options like 1, 2, 3, it feels less comprehensive than if I show you a framework that feels like everybody can find themselves in them. So I kept speaking about these 3 different solutions, and at a certain point I realized, actually, can we make a framework out of it? So I said, hey, Claude, take these options just as an input. I actually would like to come up with a framework around this. So this is how I used it basically to help me, based on my input, co-create this content, which led to this really cool 2x2 framework, which I call the Maker's Compass. And the idea here is that you can gain novelty as a maker, as a creative person, either by, you have 4 options. One is like, do you crave novelty in terms of having to work on different products or work on different audiences or with different audiences, which gives you 4 different options, from serial builder, which would be Elon Musk, to focused maker, who is a person who can work on the same product with the same business model for the same audience, but looks for novelty within smaller features, and then have 2 other options as well. So you see how with one big brain dump, I basically created the whole structure of the video and even laid the foundations for the core framework of that idea. But I also want to show you how this got developed this is just an initial brain dump, right? So what happened after that? So this is basically my iterative process, me talking with Claude to get to the final stage, which in this case was the script of the video. So iterative process. So this is basically what Claude responded to me to this very long input. And I usually ask it in this kind of process, I ask it just to play back what it is hearing from me. And that's why it's saying here, hey, I'll play back what I'm hearing. So what you're saying is the core problem, the 3 options, framework ideas. And I actually didn't like any of these ideas, just didn't feel right. And this is a very important part of the process as well, is like you can use AI as the tool to suggest ideas, brainstorm ideas, but you should be the final tastemaker and decider based on your knowledge and your experience. You should be able to say yes and no and be able to look further. And important point, it's still morning here and Monday morning, and my English brain is still being developed. That's why I'm having some issues with some pronunciation. Anyway, so this is, I'm still at this stage of the process, still on a walk with Claude. So I'm not just doing the initial brain dump on a walk, but I'm also doing this initial iteration. So I would stop, read what it created, and then keep moving and give it my feedback. And my feedback was, hey, I think we're going somewhere with this, but I don't fully agree. I generally agree that this is going to be a framework. There's something here. I just don't agree with examples. And I think audience could be one axis, but I'm not sure about the other axis. So then it creates some other options. I read through this, still didn't quite like it. I feel like, audience makes sense as an axis in terms of what you as a maker are choosing to focus on or not focus on. But I don't think most creative founders are actually deciding about multiple companies or same companies. They're more thinking about products. And that's what then led me to basically lead it into this direction, which is giving it feedback to create a 2x2, which is focused on, focused on like these two questions, as we said before. Are you focusing on one audience or different audiences, or one product or different products? And then the result is basically this 2x2. So at this stage of the process, I would then ask it to generate the first draft. So can you please prepare me a draft? As you can see, the last sentence here. And Claude already has a lot of input from my side, from my previous videos too, so it knows how I speak in videos, what kind of language I use, how my scripts are usually structured. So ask it to just, based on that, create a first draft. And even if you've watched the beginning of that very video, you can see that I have used some of this language, but reshaped it. So usually Claude gives me the result that's 80-85% there, maybe sometimes 90% there, because it knows my tone of voice. It knows how I like to pace in videos, short sentences or long sentences, or a mixture of that. And this is all because I have given it so much input through my language, through speaking with it, speaking to it, that it can reuse my language and really hit the tone of voice well. So then I move into Google Doc and I start working with it. And then I basically edit the draft that I have. I would say I probably spent like 2 hours on this part, or like let's say 90 minutes to 2 hours, and then another 90 minutes to 2 hours on this part, basically getting this script ready so that I can actually then record. So yeah, so that's my process. Hope it serves as an inspiration to some of you. And yeah, this works for me because I think by talking on the move, and you might be different. And that's why I love these frameworks, because I'm trying to show you not just my process, but also maybe how you can think about your process. So my point of this video is to give you some inspiration for you to try this if you are this kind of processor. And if you're not, I think you should try something else and find yours, because I think that is very, very, very important to be able to get to know yourself, get to know your process, and to be able to build on that and just see what works for you. One question I would have for you is just like, when do your best ideas come? Is it like in meetings when you're talking? Is it in meetings when you're quiet? Is it late at night when you're writing? Is it when you're sketching something? Is it when you're coding? I mean, that's your signal, right? That's the beginning of your signal to figure out what kind of processor you are, what kind of idea developer you are. And once you have that, you can build your whole week around this, your whole work process around this. Because now that I know this, I know that my mornings can basically be walks. And that's amazing because I love walks. And I know that on Monday morning or Wednesday morning, Thursday morning, I can go on a walk and I can just work on new ideas. And yeah, that has been a revelation for me, not being stuck indoors anymore. Because yeah, when I was indoors, it felt like work just because everybody else does it, but it just wasn't right for me. Last thing I would say is that if you are indeed a creative founder who feels like the business doesn't want you to be creative, I would suggest you to watch this video to see what is also the kind of end result of this process. So this video should be somewhere on the screen right now. So it's titled "Business What's Boring But You Crave Novelty," and I think you might enjoy it if you enjoyed this video as well. So see you there. Bye-bye.